Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. Today we're looking at a new case from Jonsbo. This is their D41 series and this was kindly sent out by Overclockers, one of the big UK retailers, so big thank you to those guys. I'll link these down below if you fancy picking one up by the end of the video. But this is their new series of cases that offer an 8-inch screen in the front, and they're available in loads of different configurations as well. So you've got a white, there's a black, you can get it in ATX, a MATX version. You can get it with and without the screen, and you can also get it with a solid panel on the front or a mesh panel if you want a little bit more airflow. So as you can tell by the picture, I put up loads of different configurations, so I'm quite interested to see which one people are going to go for actually. But like I said, I've got the screen one for us to see today. You've got the ATX version with a solid front panel. So let's get into the box. So straight out of the box, we've got a big old accessory box, which is nice. And then of course, we've got some decent polystyrene to protect it. A bit of a static shock, not too bad this time around. Quite prone to getting those, but this one was okay. So from looking at it at the top in my angle from the back, it reminds me a lot of the Asus AP201, which I think if you were to get the MATX, you would be very close to the similar design. But let's take a look around. So of course we've got that screen at the front. So this is an 8-inch LED screen with a resolution of 1280 by 1800. You've got a 60 Hz refresh rate and that's a 16.10 aspect ratio. The 60 Hz made me immediately think we could just try some gaming on it just for the lols, just to see if it works or not. Other bits on the front while we're here, we've got a USB type A port. This is a USB 3, and we've got a headphone and microphone combi jack, and USB type C, which is USB 3.2 Gen 2. Then there's a little power button above that. So looking at it from the side, let's take off the panel. Like I mentioned, it's the push pins, so it comes off very easily. There was a little seal I had to cut just between the screen and the little tempered glass bit there. Nice panel. This will be clear for both. There isn't a tint with the black one. Now immediately, the Jonsbo Studio on the side again gives me the AP201 vibes for the Asus Prime that they have on theirs. Very similar though. So we've got our normal accessories in a little bag here. So some general screws and things like that. Also some cable ties. So here's our cable that will go from the back to our power supply. Much like the AP201 again, this has a very similar style of mounting the power supply, so it's in the front there. You will have 4 positions, you can adjust it, but it will give you different GPU clearance depending on where you have it positioned, so I'll go over that in a little bit more detail in a bit. So as this is an ATX layout, we've got the normal 7 expansion slots on the back. There's a nice little thumb screw to just open that panel up to access that. As you can tell, lots of perforations everywhere, so lots of options for cooling. So in the bottom you can do up to a 360mm radiator or 320mm fans to 140s. That also has a big old magnetic dust filter on the bottom, which is great. There's also 168mm of clearance for your CPU coolers as well, so you can actually fit an NHD15 in this, believe it or not, so pretty surprised. Actually tilting it up, you can got some nice rubber feet, some silver as well, so it breaks up the all white theme. Turning that back up and going onto the top, we've got 2 thumb screws to remove the top panel. Then that just slides off. No dust filter on that one, but it's going to be, generally speaking, exhausting air out the top, so you're not going to really need it anyway. Then we've got support again for up to 360mm of radiator or fans, so you could do 3 120s or you could do 2 140s if you'd rather. Let's move that case up while we have a look at our accessory box for the screen. So instructions, D31, D41, so the D31 just refers to the MATX version over the bigger one, which is the D41. 2 kind of long standoffs. I'm presuming this will be if you want to use it on your desk, which is a pretty cool feature. You can have it at an angle on your desk rather than having it in front of the case. Then we've got a HDMI to mini HDMI, which will obviously be for your video signal. Then we've got a USB type C to USB type A, which is for the power. Now something really cool is that the screen is actually removable. So if you're not a fan of it in the front, or maybe you're in a scenario where it's just a little bit difficult to see, you can take that out, use it on your desk, so you can see all your stats or whatever you want to put on it, and then just use this front panel to cover it up to keep the front nice and tidy. So push pins to do the front bit, and then the same again for the screen, which I think is so nice that it's so quick to take off like that if you just want a bit of a change up. So very cool. So another cool couple of features about this, it's got a 1.1mm thick scratch resistant coating on the front, which is great, especially when you use it on your desktop, so you're not going to mark it. There's some buttons on the side as well to control the power and also the brightness of the screen. So that's easily accessible from either the side of your case or obviously when it's on your desk. So now that's fully off, you can see more of our mounting options. So here are the 4 slots I said about for the power supply mount. Will depend on your graphics card length and things that you can fit and when you do change it. So I'll put those all on the screen now for you to have a quick read through, because if you're going to look at something like putting a 4080 Strix in this, it's going to take up a lot of space, so it will limit you on what power supply length you can get away with and obviously where you're going to position it. So on the back of the case we've got support for a 120mm rear exhaust fan, And then if we look at the expansion slots, you see one of them ones right at the bottom has got a couple of notches. So this is where the cables for the screen are going to come out. So you can run them behind the motherboard tray, put them up through the grommets just where the bottom of the motherboard would be, out through the back, then into your graphics card and up to your motherboard for the power. Pretty cool. And you can also see there's a drive cage as well there, so you can support up to 2.5 3.5 inch drives, and then 3 2.5s on the back with the cable management, which we'll show you now. So again, we've got another push pin panel. So there's one of the 2.5 inch mounts, and we've got another one here. So loads of tie down points on this case, pretty much, you know, within a couple of inches as one. So lots of different options there. A bit obviously deeper channel there for the 24 pin, where your thickest cable will be. 8 pin and things you can run up. There's a couple of channels at the top as well for those cables to run through, so EPS especially, and then any ones for your maybe CPU fans or RGB from the top. A little bit smaller of a gap down the bottom for your front panel and things like that, and any extra fans you want to add on. Bit of a deeper one on the right hand side, so for your front panel audio and things like that. In this bag we've just got the USB-C front panel and also audio. So it's in a pretty unassembled state now, but I'm actually going to leave it like that, and I'm actually going to build in it. I thought I'd do a little bit more than an overview, as it is a pretty special case, especially with this screen. I know a lot of you guys will want to see this powered up as well, rather than just black, so why not put a system in it and show you that as well. We can show you it on the desktop as well, rather than just the front of the case, so you know, we'll have a look at that. It'll also allow me to check the any problems that come up against the power supply mounts in the front as well, with graphics cards and things like that as well. So make it an actual review rather than just an overview. So now I'll get building and we'll come back when it's all complete. So a bit of a Gamers Nexus outro with my notes and things, but I've got quite a lot to say because there's a lot you need to take into consideration when you are building in this system. First of all, let me just run through the components that I put into this one. We've got a NZXT B650E motherboard with the 7950X, totally overkill, but it was just what was in there from the last case. Didn't really feel that I needed to change it. The AIO is the Kraken 360, the new one. That's got the new RGB core fans on there as well. There's a Firecuda 510 for the storage, and then we've got the graphics card, which is a 4070. I did try the 4080 Strix as well. More on that in a minute, because there are some things you need to know when you're actually putting it together. So starting off with airflow, I've added a 120mm fan in the front, but it's got a very limited amount of gap with the perforations on the right hand side to actually suck in that air. So if you're going to go for high-end parts, then get the mesh panel on the front just to, you know, passively let some air through, even if you're not going to add an additional fan. But mid-tier kind of system, so say 13600 or a 7600X, then go for a solid panel. Won't matter too much. Cooling wise, you can see I've got a 360 in this case. Now I've had to change the little mounting and stuff at the front, so I've got an additional 120mm for intake, and then I've had to move the power supply up to accommodate that. But then that means I have to have my tubes from that AIO coming from the left. I'd usually run them from the right. I think it looks a bit more clean. So you are a little bit limited with your tubing runs if you're using a 360. Now obviously if you can, go for a 280. Just to make life a little bit easier, but then if you're going to be putting higher end performance parts in, you're going to need the AIO in the first place anyway, so you really do need to consider what you're going to be using in this case, and if you're going to add an additional 120 in the front or not. Graphics cards, you can see the 4070 is sat in there very comfortably. If you want to use anything like a 4080 Strix, there are some things you have to consider to actually squeeze it in. First and foremost is your power supply. Now I'm using a C1200 from NZXT in this standard 160mm power supply, even though it is a high wattage. And I've orientated it with the fan at the front of the case to draw in some hopefully fresh air through the little perforations that we've got on the side. That means the cables are a little bit further into the case than if it was to be flipped the other way around, and that does limit fitting in the Strix card. So you need to take out the fan to be able to rotate the cables around so they're closer to the front of the case. That will then give you the extra room to allow the Strix card to go in. I hope that makes sense. It's really difficult. Like I said, the B-roll should hopefully make a little bit more sense of things. Also, because of how that power supply is in the case rather than it traditionally being at the back, it's going to be sucking air in from the system and also exhausting it straight into the system again, unlike it, you know, going through the fan from maybe up from the case and then out the back like it usually would. Because it's sat in the front of the case, it's got nowhere to go. So another thing that's going to make your system a little bit warmer. Also, being that it's an ATX power supply, it does make cable management in the back a little bit more difficult, which you've got a bit of extra cable. I'd like it to be maybe 1/3 of an inch deeper just to allow those cables in there. I've not got that much stuff in here. I have got a hub for the fans that's on the AIO, but the rest of splitters and things, there's not that much in terms of cables, and it's very difficult to get the side panel on. So a bit more depth would be really appreciated, especially for like the 24 pin, because it's just so chunky. Also some grommets where the cable management holes are on the other side of the case as well would be nice. You can see all the excess cables are behind there, and just all the ones that are managing that channel, just because there's nothing to, you know, cover them on the other side, so they're very easy to see. A couple of grommets would be nice, just kind of cover them up. Also gives the illusion that it's clear and not jam-packed back there either. So onto the main topic, of course, the screen. I think this is a really nice addition, and the fact that you can take it off the front and use it as a desktop screen is really nice. I would like some threads in the other side as well, because I think it would be really nice to have this as an external portrait display. Maybe you could have Twitch chat or Discord or something like on there. Something like that would be pretty cool. Maybe even a little Spotify media player would be quite nice. So just, you know, another thread the other side would easily allow that to happen. But as it is for the screen itself, pretty good, nice and bright as well. Obviously a smaller resolution, but that is the case being that it's a small display. Greasing the cable is pretty easy as well. You've got a small hole that's just up by where the screen goes, round to the back of the motherboard tray. Then you can go back into the case and then out by that expansion slot like I showed you at the start of the video. You could make that a little bit more tidy, I think. Possibly bringing it out through a couple of holes in the, maybe even the back panel. Then you could run the cables from the back of the motherboard tray straight out, rather than having them go back into the case and being a little bit visible at the bottom. Just makes it a little bit more tidy again. So the D41, I really like it. It was great to build in, very simple to build in. You just have those limitations, especially when you put that 120mm fan in. It does make things a little bit more tricky, and you do have to think about what you're going to be doing, because otherwise you'll be putting stuff in, taking it back out, rinse and repeat until you find the right way to kind of Tetris it into the case. I don't think this case is going to be suited for the ultimate high-end hardware either, just purely because you're very limited on what you can fit in it. Like I said, if you want to put a Strix, then no 120, got a flip power supply around, you know, be very careful of what you're going to be fitting in there. That is, of course, unless you're willing to water cool it all, then you will cut off like 2/5 of the card, because it's just all over engineered heatsink. So that will bring the size down. You might be able to do it, but then you've got to think about the fact you're going to have to put a pump res in there as well. So, you know, there are pros and cons to water cooling it as well to try and get things in there. So, but I will be answering any questions you people have, because I think this is going to be a case you just have to get a lot of advice for, to see what you're going to fit in it before you do it. Because if you don't have parts on hand, then this is going to be an absolute nightmare. If something doesn't fit quite right, you're going to have to wait for something else to arrive, replace it, send it back. So yeah, ask me any questions down below, and I'll do my best to advise you to save any headaches appearing in the future. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been something a little bit different, and it's taken me a while to do this, but I think the end result is good, because it gives you an actual review of the case rather than just an overview. Especially if you've got the screen as well, you want to see it all working and in action rather than just black on the front, although that's what it is now. But B-roll and everything like that is the magic. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for Overclockers sending this out for me to look at. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and ding the bell so you don't miss a future one. All links to the products and all the different range SKUs will be in the description as well if you want to pick one up. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.